Most women waste their energy trying to be understood, trying to be heard, trying to fix everything and everyone around them. But what if I told you that the moment you stop explaining, stop chasing, and instead turn your focus inwards, the world begins to respond differently. Silence is not weakness. Silence is alignment. And when a woman learns to direct her attention to herself, to her growth, to her peace, she becomes untouchable, unstoppable, and everything she once chased begins to chase her instead. There is a great misunderstanding when it comes to silence. Many think that silence is a form of weakness, that if you are quiet, you are powerless. But that is far from the truth. Real power does not always make noise. Real strength often hides in stillness, because when you learn not to react to everything, when you train yourself to stay silent instead of giving in to the immediate urge to respond, you have already mastered something that most people never will control over your own energy. Think about it. Every time someone provokes you, every time someone tries to test your patience, they are pulling at your emotions. They want to drag you into their chaos, into their drama, into their way of thinking. And when you react immediately, you are no longer in control. You are being controlled. The moment you lose yourself in an argument, in defending, in proving, in justifying, you give away your power. But when you remain silent, you send a different message. You show that you are not shaken. You show that you do not need to prove yourself. And you show that your energy is too precious to be wasted on noise. Silence is not passive. It is active. It is a choice. It is you saying, I will not engage in what drains me. I will not argue with someone who does not even listen. I will not fight battles that do not deserve my sword. And when you do this, something powerful happens. People begin to notice. They realize they cannot manipulate you the way they used to. They cannot disturb you the way they expected. They cannot get a reaction out of you. And that unsettles them more than anything you could have said. You see, words can be dismissed. Arguments can be twisted. But silence cannot be ignored. Silence makes people look at themselves because there is nothing else left to focus on. Your silence becomes the mirror that reflects back their behavior. It forces them to ask, why is she not responding? Why is she so calm? Why is she not affected? And in that moment, they are faced with themselves, not with you. That is how silence becomes your greatest power. But I also want you to understand that silence is not about suppression. It is not about holding in your voice out of fear or out of weakness. It is about choosing when your voice is worth using. It is about discernment. A queen does not rise to defend her throne against every small attack. She only moves when it truly matters. That is how her presence remains powerful. And the same applies to you. When you stay silent in the right moments, your words, when you finally speak, carry far greater weight, because people know that if you broke the silence, then it must be important. Silence also protects your energy. Every time you choose not to react, you are conserving strength. You are not pouring out your emotions into arguments that lead nowhere. You are keeping your peace. And with that preserved energy, you can invest in yourself, in your growth, in your future. This is why silence is not weakness, but wisdom. It is self-mastery in action. When a woman learns the power of silence, she stops being easily shaken. She becomes unbothered by the noise of the world. And the moment she becomes unbothered, she becomes unstoppable. Most of the time, women are taught to focus on everyone else but themselves. From a young age, they are told to care, to nurture, to give, to be the one who holds everything together. And while these are beautiful qualities, they also become heavy burdens when you forget yourself in the process. You pour into others, you fix their problems, you sacrifice your own needs. And yet what happens in the end? Many times you are left feeling drained, unappreciated, and unnoticed. The truth is, no matter how much energy you give to others, if you are not centered within yourself, you will always feel empty. The turning point begins when you decide to shift that focus back to where it belongs, on yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a wise way. Because the moment you begin to invest in your own growth, your own healing, your own peace, everything around you starts to change. People can sense it. Energy does not lie. When you carry yourself with self-respect, when you walk with inner confidence, when you are grounded in who you are, you no longer need to run after validation. You no longer need to beg for attention. You no longer have to prove your worth, because your very presence speaks it. When you are constantly giving your focus to others, what they think, what they want, how they feel, you live in reaction to the outside world. Your emotions rise and fall based on how people treat you. But when you turn inward, you take back control. You start asking yourself, what do I need? What makes me feel alive? What brings me peace? And as you begin to act on those answers, you realize something profound. The more you focus on your own development, the less the chaos of others affects you. This is why focusing on yourself is the most powerful act of love you can practice, because it is from that place of fullness that you can truly give. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and yet so many women try. They think if they keep giving, one day someone will give back to them, but often it doesn't work that way. What actually attracts people, respect, and opportunities is not your constant sacrifice, but your self-possession. When you hold yourself with dignity, when you prioritize your well-being, when you radiate inner strength, everything you once chased begins to find its way toward you. There is also something magnetic about a woman who focuses on herself. She does not beg for love, yet love finds her. She does not plead for respect, yet respect surrounds her. She does not compete for attention because her attention is already rooted in her own growth. People feel it and they respond to it. And here lies the paradox. The less you focus on fixing others, the more they start to adjust on their own. The less you try to hold on, the more things fall into place naturally. But understand this clearly. Focusing on yourself does not mean you stop caring for others. It means you stop losing yourself for them. It means you learn to love without abandoning your own needs. It means you stop making sacrifices that destroy your spirit. When you put yourself first, you are not abandoning others. You are showing them what real balance looks like, and through that you give them permission to do the same. So the next time you feel the urge to fix someone, pause and ask, what if I directed that energy back to myself? Because the moment a woman turns inward, the world around her begins to shift in her favor. There is something profoundly powerful in silence that many people overlook. When you choose not to respond, when you hold back your words and simply stay still, you create space. And in that space, people are forced to face themselves. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their actions, their choices, and their behavior back at them. This is why silence often speaks louder than words. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. You don't even have to justify yourself, because the absence of your voice leaves room for their own conscience to echo louder than anything you could have said. Think of the moments when you reacted quickly. When you tried to defend yourself, when you tried to make someone see your point of view, what usually happened? They shut down, or they argued back harder, or they dismissed you. But when you step back and allow silence to enter, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly there is no battle, no resistance, no words to push against. Instead, the other person is left with only their own actions to reflect upon. And that is often far more uncomfortable than any argument could ever be. When you remain silent, you are not surrendering. You are holding up a mirror. People begin to wonder, why isn't she responding? Why isn't she fighting back? Why isn't she justifying herself? And in those questions, they start confronting their own behavior. Silence exposes the truth in ways words cannot. Because while words can be twisted, denied, or ignored, silence cannot be escaped. It lingers. It creates a weight. It forces the other person to sit with themselves. And this is where your strength truly shows, because staying silent requires discipline. It is far easier to react, to express your anger, to demand answers. But when you train yourself to withhold your reaction, you not only show self-control, you also send a clear message. My peace is not up for negotiation. I don't need to fight to prove my worth. I don't need to argue to validate my truth. That message is felt even if no words are spoken. Your silence also creates contrast. When someone expects drama beauties met with calmness, it unsettles them. When they expect you to break but you remain centered, it makes them question themselves. That questioning is the beginning of change. But notice the change does not come because you push them into it. It comes because they confronted themselves through the mirror of your silence. This is the quiet strength that transforms relationships, not through force, but through presence. And silence does not just impact others, it impacts you as well. When you stop reacting, you give yourself the chance to observe clearly. You can see who someone really is. When you stop speaking and simply watch, you can sense their intentions, their patterns, their truth. Silence sharpens your intuition. It allows you to step out of emotional entanglement and into clarity. Instead of being blinded by arguments, you see reality for what it is. This is why silence is never empty. It is full of answers. It reveals both the truth of others and the truth within yourself. It gives space for reflection, for growth, for understanding. And most importantly, it reminds you that your power does not lie in proving anything to anyone. It lies in knowing who you are, even without saying a word. When a woman embraces silence as her mirror, she no longer wastes energy trying to be understood. She allows others to face themselves, and in doing so, she stands taller without even moving a muscle. Energy is one of the most precious resources you have, and yet most people spend it carelessly. They waste it on arguments, on chasing answers, on trying to be understood by those who have no intention of understanding them. They waste it on anger, on proving a point, on holding on to situations that are no longer serving their growth. And the truth is, every time you spend your energy like this, you are robbing yourself of the strength you could have invested into building your own life. Think for a moment how often you felt drained, not because of physical work, but because of emotional battles. A single argument can take away more energy than an entire day of activity. Acing disappointment, if you dwell on it, can leave you feeling exhausted for hours. But when you begin to recognize the value of your energy, you also begin to recognize the importance of redirecting it. Instead of pouring it into battles that lead nowhere, you can choose to pour it into your own growth, your own peace, and your own goals. The discipline of silence teaches this naturally. When you choose silence over reaction, you are not suppressing yourself. You are conserving power. You are saying, this moment is not worth the energy it would take from me. I choose to keep my strength. And what happens then is that you slowly begin to accumulate energy. You are no longer leaking it into situations that don't matter. You are no longer drained by trying to fix what is not yours to fix. You are building a reservoir of strength inside you. And that reservoir gives you clarity, calmness, and direction. And here is the beauty of energy where you direct it. Life begins to expand. If you constantly direct it toward conflict, you will experience more conflict. If you direct it toward fear, you will experience more limitations. But if you direct it toward your growth, toward your vision, toward your peace, then life begins to expand in that direction. What you feed with your energy grows, and what you starve of your energy slowly fades away. This is why being selective with your reactions is not weakness, it is strategy. Every moment you do not give away your energy to chaos, you strengthen your ability to create something meaningful for yourself. That energy can now be invested into your health, your creativity, your work, your relationships, and most importantly, into the relationship you have with yourself. And when you consistently choose to redirect your energy inwards, you will notice that your life begins to transform slowly. At first, But undeniably, people will start to notice a shift. They will see that you are not as easily disturbed, that you are no longer running in circles with arguments and drama. They will see that you are moving differently, speaking differently, carrying yourself differently. And what they are really noticing is not something external. It is the result of energy that has been conserved, redirected, and used to build you. The greatest mistake people make is thinking that strength is shown in how loudly you can respond, how much you can fight back. But real strength is shown in how wisely you use your energy. It is shown in your ability to walk away from the unnecessary, so you can walk toward what truly matters. And once you master this, once you learn to conserve and redirect your energy, you become untouchable because nothing outside of you has the power to drain you anymore. One of the most powerful shifts that takes place when a woman decides to focus on herself and remain silent is the change in dynamics between her and the world around her. For so long, many women are conditioned to chase. Chasing approval, chasing answers, chasing love, chasing attention. And the more you chase, the more it slips away because chasing comes from a place of lack. It says, I need something outside of me to feel whole. But when you stop chasing, when you stop running after what does not respect your value, something incredible begins to happen. The roles reverse. Instead of you seeking, others begin to seek you. This is not a game of manipulation, but a natural response to energy. When you chase, you give away your power. You make someone or something outside of you the source of your fulfillment. But when you pull that energy back, when you decide to stay silent, when you invest into yourself, you become the source. And people feel it. They sense the difference. Suddenly, your presence feels different because it is no longer desperate. It is no longer dependent. It is no longer clinging. It is whole. And wholeness attracts. Think about it like this. When someone is constantly demanding your attention, constantly pulling on your energy, you naturally want to step back. But when someone is calm, centered, and unbothered, you feel drawn to them. That is exactly what happens when a woman chooses silence and self-focus. The less she seeks, the more she is sought after. The less she explains, the more people want to understand her. The less she tries to prove her worth, the more her worth is recognized. And what's even more important is how you feel in this shift. When you stop chasing, you are no longer anxious about outcomes. You are no longer waiting for validation. You are no longer wondering if you are enough. You know you are enough because you have turned that energy back toward yourself. And in that knowing there is a peace that cannot be shaken. That peace is magnetic. It changes the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you show up in the world. This is also why silence is so powerful. When you don't react, when you don't explain, when you don't rush to fill the empty space with your words, you create distance. And in that distance, others are left to feel the absence of your energy. That absence becomes a presence on its own. They begin to notice what they once took for granted. They begin to realize what they are missing. And very often that realization makes them come closer, not because you demanded it, but because your silence made them see your value more clearly. It is in this shift that everything begins to fall into place naturally, because you are no longer bending yourself to fit into someone else's world. You are no longer exhausting yourself trying to be heard. You are no longer chasing what is running away from you. Instead, you stand in your center, and from that center life begins to rearrange itself around you. This is the paradox of self-focus and silences. The less you chase, the more comes to you. The less you speak, the more you are heard. The less you prove, the more you are respected. And once you experience this shift, you will never again want to live any other way. When a woman chooses silence and focuses on herself, what truly happens is alignment. And alignment is the key to making everything in life fall into place. Most of the time, the struggles we face are not because life is against us, but because we are out of alignment with ourselves. We are pulled in so many directions, trying to meet expectations, trying to please others, trying to hold on to things that do not belong to us, that we lose the connection to our own truth. But the moment you turn inward, the moment you stop fighting unnecessary battles and choose peace, you begin to realign with who you really are. And from that place, life starts moving differently. Alignment means you no longer live in contradiction. It means your actions match your values, your words match your intentions, and your energy matches your purpose. It means you stop saying yes when your heart is screaming no. It means you stop allowing chaos from the outside to decide the rhythm of your life. And silence plays a vital role here because silence gives you space to hear yourself. When you are always speaking, always reacting, always chasing, you cannot hear the voice within. But when you embrace silence, you create the stillness that allows clarity to surface. That clarity is alignment. And once you are aligned, you stop forcing outcomes. You stop trying to control what is not in your control. You understand that life has its rhythm, and when you are centered, you move with it instead of against it. That is when things begin to flow. That is when relationships that are meant to stay with ease. That is when opportunities that are right for you come without struggle. That is when peace surrounds you. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the way you move within it. It is important to understand that alignment does not mean perfection. It does not mean everything will always be smooth. But it does mean that even in challenges you remain steady. You face difficulties with calmness because you are not scattered. You are rooted. You are not seeking to fix everything outside of you. Instead, you are making sure that inside of you there is balance, and that inner balance becomes the anchor that keeps you steady no matter how stormy life becomes. When a woman is aligned, she carries an unshakable presence. She does not need to raise her voice, yet people listen. She does not need to chase, yet people come closer. She does not need to prove, yet her value is undeniable. This is because alignment radiates. People can sense it without you saying a word. It shows in your posture, in your energy, in the way you carry yourself. It shows in your peace. And peace is something the world cannot ignore. So the real secret to making everything fall into place is not found in chasing more, in speaking louder, in working harder to be seen. It is found in doing the opposite, turning inward, being silent, realigning with yourself. Because when you are in alignment, life mirrors that alignment back to you. And suddenly, the things you were forcing, the people you were chasing, the answers you were searching for, they all begin to find their way to you, naturally. When a woman chooses silence and focuses on herself, she steps into alignment. And in that state of alignment, everything around her begins to fall effortlessly into